Welcome back to the Women in Movement podcast, and I'm here with Samantha Star, also known as Sam Star, Lithium Kitten on Instagram. She is a practitioner in the movement fields of handstands, flex, pole. She's an instructor in NYC, a judge, a performer, and many other things. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. I'm a cat. Meow. So I'm Samantha Star, but yeah, I go by Sam Star, a whole bunch of different iterations of names. I have been living in New York for 11 years now, and I've been teaching since 2011. So a little more than 11 years. I teach pole, I teach handstands, I teach flexibility, mobility, all of the wiggles. I like them. Let's do it.
Nice. And one of the questions from a follower leading up to the podcast, was how many airports have you handstanded in?
So I definitely use the hashtag airport handstands frequently. So I would say from about 2013 or 14 maybe to when the world shut down. I was in airports a lot. I was touring pretty seriously between like 3 to 6 months a year. I was probably on the road, going like 2 weeks here, 2 weeks back, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks back for a number of years. So I don't actually know how many airports I have handstanded in, but I've handstanded in every airport I've been in the last 10 years.
Wow.
So I'm going to say it's probably a lot. If you went back on my stories and my posts and wanted to count all of the different ones, it might take a while.
Yeah.
Handstands are easy to do when there's a lot of time to kill and a flat surface. So airports are kind of the best place for that. You're always, waiting around and there's always flat floors.
Well, you also handstand other things too, right? You try weird surfaces all the time.
I will handstand on other things as well. But I feel like airports are kind of ideal for it.
Yeah, nice. I think I've even seen like ones where you're handstanding on the moving walking platform.
Yep, I've done that a couple times.
Yeah. Looks pretty cool, especially when you're making the foot walks as well.
Yeah, I feel like the airwalk is the standard. I'm in an airport. You see other people walking on their feet, and I will do handstand walking. And then whatever sequence I feel like kind of training that day and seeing what happens.
Nice. And what is your longest handstand?
My PR is probably like 2 minutes and 12 seconds, I think, or something like that. There was a period of time where I was doing 2-minute handstands pretty consistently. I can still do them if I'm really like fighting for it and having a good day. But I don't hold for as long of time as frequently anymore. It was like a thing that I did for a while. It was like a fun challenge. And then goals and kind of things changed.
Yeah, they shift over time.
Currently, I'm back into doing 6 1-minute handstands every day at the end of my morning practice.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
That's kind of the game I'm back on right now.
Yeah, and what does your morning practice look like?
So I think the morning practice is really important, and everybody already has a morning practice without even realizing it. For a lot of people, it's not a movement morning practice. It's a coffee movement practice. Drinking the coffee, lifting the coffee to mouth. But I think that for me, having a movement practice started actually a little bit before I started teaching. I would wake up and I would sit down and my back hurt. And I was like, I'm too young for this to be happening to me. So I started doing bent knee forward folds and just kind of hanging over my legs in the morning to stretch my body out in a different way, and foam rolling. And at that time, I had started to get a little bit more into yoga, like more seriously. And I kind of transitioned into this morning practice. And it, like I said, it started with like a 2-second hang, and it turned into now it's some joint mobility, and then 5 minutes of planks while I move through them, a little yoga movement sequence, a little bit of stretching, and then now the 6 1-minute handstands.
Nice.
At other iterations, there have been abs and other movement activities and stretching, like longer stretching and things like this. But it's about, I would say 40 minutes now. So 20 minutes of movement and then about 20 minutes of handstand.
Okay.
Resting in between the handstands takes a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard at one point that you also had a meditative practice part.
So there was at one point. Currently, it's not.
Okay.
I would say pre-COVID, I had taken a number of yoga teacher trainings with Science of Self and Rose Aaron, and had been a little bit more into meditation and breath work and a little bit of chanting. I didn't do the chanting as much in my own personal practice, but there was for a while a section of breath work that I was into, and I also did some eye gazing for a while. But sometimes with like the lack of time, things change and things kind of morph. So I'm doing less of that now. It kind of has moved itself out. During the pandemic, I did morning practice at the very beginning on Instagram Live for people. I was like, I'm doing this anyway. I was like, I need some semblance of normalcy. I'm like, we're getting up every day at 7. And if anybody wants to jump on and do it with us, cool. It was me and my partner. And we did abs and breath work and eye gazing during that time. Nice. And then as the world kind of reopened and things kind of shifted, the breath work and the eye gazing has kind of gone to the side a little bit.
Yeah.
For now. But it's okay because, I don't know, I feel like morning practice kind of does change and morph as things happen. And part of the reason that I'm doing the morning practice too is just to kind of keep my body functioning. So it's kind of a test of like, oh, how are things feeling today? Do I have to compensate? How do I have to compensate? And like, where do I need to send my energy?
Yeah, I think it's super important to have that daily check-in. And even if it's just like a routine of like, I usually do this thing, how does my body feel when I do this thing? And yes, the morning practice shifting, I think, is also important because you need different things in your life at different points. For sure. And the eye gazing, like it probably changed you in a whole new way at that point. And maybe if you go back in increments, you want that, but you don't need that as heavily at this moment.
Yeah.
Or
no, exactly.
The breath work or whatever it is.
I think some of it too is also what is influencing you in the moment. So that does change based on how things are going. Like right now, the handstands are more important than me than the breath work and the eye gazing. So it just kind of changes as things happen. I think in a weird way, I also kind of do it just to be like, I did more than anybody else did. Like kind of a feeling of like knowing that I feel like accomplished, that I've done something, even if I haven't done anything else the rest of the day, even though I usually do. Like that's my start. And I've also used my morning practice as a warm-up for classes before. Right. That's always entertaining. So it could be a warm-up, it could be a check-in, but it could also be like a workout.
Yeah. And also like the rest of the day, you spend predominantly most of the day probably trying to feel what's in other people's bodies and what they're doing. And so you're kind of like, let me check in with myself first, so that, because I notice too that it's easy when you're teaching a class to just like kind of lose sight of like what's happening in your body unless you really tell yourself to check in. Especially when I'm teaching like basketball and like to little kids, I'm like a little hunched over and then I'm like, oh, I need to like straighten up again. It's very easy to get in someone else's body when you're trying to assist them at such a deep level. Yeah. Okay, so your background is in gymnastics, hiking, sports as a kid. How do you think that influenced what motivates you now, or just like where your life kind of took you? So
I guess, I did ballet and gymnastics as a kid, and then I stopped doing ballet to do gymnastics because I was more suited to that. And then I stopped doing gymnastics probably when I hit puberty and kind of like decided that I wanted to have a social life instead of just going to gymnastics all the time. And it was fun, and I'm glad that I did it. And like as an adult, I wish I had done it a little bit longer, but as a kid, it was good the way it was. And then in high school, I did a lot of rock climbing and snowboarding and hiking and things like this. So just kind of stayed active. I guess that like my parents are also very active. They still like hike and ski all the time. And so nice. I think it's just kind of ingrained in my body that I have to keep moving. Yeah. So I think that helped having like that little bit of base and understanding as a kid. Because that muscle memory does kind of stick with you forever. But at the same time, there's plenty of people I know that like never had any movement as a kid, sports or dance or whatever, and have still found ways to explore it as an adult. And so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that that's very common I've witnessed it in pole a lot. It's like a lot of individuals who have been drawn to pole where they haven't been drawn to like other movements.
Yeah. Pole is I feel like a place that anybody can come to. No matter what your background is, no matter what your current lifestyle is, there's so many different variations of pole, and the pole community is pretty welcoming because I think that a lot of people weren't welcome in other places. And so it's a place that people can gather that might not want to be part of the norm and want to be a little bit different and explore different options in different community.
So what is your like background in pole? Because we haven't even gotten into that yet, but that is a big part of your life right now too, still.
I mean, it's been a part of my life for a long time. So I started pole dancing in 2001 in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Wow.
At a strip club. And I did not know what I was doing, but I was a natural. So I think something between like playing on monkey bars and rock climbing helped me just kind of like want to be upside down and hang out and around. So that's kind of where it started. And I didn't know what I was doing and figured it out and enjoyed it. And in 2002, I moved to Boston and worked at a club there for 10 years. And I have one video, which maybe I'll post one day, of I think it was in 2010. This is pre-Instagram. I probably kind of like pre-YouTube to some degree, but like I didn't know that there was any like pole dancing community of any sort. And I had a friend of mine who does band photography come and take a video of me at the club. And I like put on my sportiest looking outfit so I could pretend like, I don't know, it was just like basically to prove what I could do in like when I was old and nobody believed that I had done this pole dancing thing. And little did I know. But so it's kind of interesting because it was this like whole world that I didn't know about. And in 2011, a friend of mine who had worked at the club had also worked at a pole dancing studio in Boston. Had to get an operation and had to be out for a while and was like, please take over my classes. And I was like, no way, I don't want to teach. And then she convinced me and I got hired kind of over the phone based on my pole reputation. And I sat in on a class and then I basically just kind of started teaching and I was panicked my first week. But when I started teaching and when I got in the room and I realized that I could do this and that I was really good at it and I could see what people weren't doing and was able to kind of figure out things to be like, oh, you should do this and this, and then now you can do this move. And I hadn't previously realized that that was intuitive for me and that it wasn't intuitive for other people until I started teaching. And I was like, oh, no, not everybody gets it. I can help get it and help explain it to people. So I started teaching at Boston Pole Fitness in 2011. In 2012, I started competing and I was pretty isolated. Like I didn't really work with other people. I didn't really look at anything online. And I have always kind of like created my own routines and stuff like that. And I put together a routine and went to Midwest and I think I placed third. And I remember some reps from X-Pole came up to me and were like, you're amazing. Make a little bit more of a name for yourself and maybe we'll pick you up. And I was like, what? Cool. And so I did the first comp and then my second comp was APFA, which is a comp that doesn't exist anymore, but it was in New York. And I was up against, I think it was like Phoenix Kazari and Nadia Sharif and Heidi Coker and like these big names that like hypothetically, like I had no business being in this competition, but like I was in this competition. And I ended up winning Athlete of the Year, which is the title that they gave me, which was really cool. And I'm still friends with a lot of those people to this day. And it's kind of neat to be able to know that. And then I want to say my third comp I bombed. And then I want to say maybe the fourth one is the one that kind of propelled me into OG stardom, which was Pole Expo 2013. Right. And I won that comp. And at that point, it was one of like 6 comps in the world. And so if you were accepted, people knew who you were. If you won, people knew who you were. Nowadays, it's a lot different because there's a comp every other minute. And none of them matter unless you're paying attention to that person or that comp. But back in the day, everybody knew who you were. That was the thing to watch. Like, that was the comp to be at. And X-Pole came up to me after, as well as Bad Kitty. And both of them picked me up as, I guess, X-Pole, I was an athlete. And Bad Kitty, I was an ambassador. Bad Kitty is a clothing company that also doesn't exist anymore. But they were the only clothing company at the time. And again, like, the ambassadors that were for them were international, and everybody knew who we were. And it was really cool because it was like a little community, and it was a good time, and kind of propelled from there. And then I continued competing pretty seriously until 2019 was my last comp. So pre-pandemic.
So you competed from like 2012 to 2019. So like 7 years of competition.
Like pretty seriously.
Yeah.
Like a number of competitions a year, internationally, nationally. I won one international title other than the Expo one. And the rest of them were all like second place or third place. And a couple of them I didn't place at all. And but a lot of it was fun. It was just a good time. And I really enjoyed traveling to compete, finding reasons to go different places to compete, and making friends in the competition circuit, because the more you see people in different places, the more you kind of connect with them. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that like a common theme for you, what I've seen is that like you really do embrace the community in the movement spaces that you're in. So whether I see like a bunch of people in a random park in New York City doing handstands, or like you said, during the pandemic, people were online with you doing morning practice. It's like consistently trying to find or meet new people and embrace that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I really enjoy inspiring people to move, no matter what the movement is. And I really do enjoy gathering people for handstands in random places. And it's funny because, like, we do parks in New York, and people always come up and be like, what are you guys doing? Are you in the circus? And we're like, just friends doing handstands because we like handstands and each other. Like, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's also neat because like I said, have traveled the world a number of times over and have gone back to some places repeatedly based on people I've met through movement and different studio owners that I've become friends with and different practitioners that I've become friends with. And when I'm in their region or their country or wherever, I like to be like, hey, let's get together and do something.
Yeah.
And play and practice and train.
Yeah. It's like, it's definitely something to just be in a space with people and not like verbally communicate, but just like non-verbally, just like move around in the space. It's like it's a different type of bond. Yeah. It's like really cool. Even yesterday when we were all in, when my friend Simone and I took your handstand class last night, we're like doing the minute challenge at the end or whatnot. And I'm like just staring around at everyone else in the room. We're all upside down. And like, you're in the middle, just like, you know, chilling, no wall, nothing. But it was just a really like a different visual that it won't break from my mind. Cause I'm like, everyone's just upside down. Like we're all doing the same thing.
I think that is kind of like my goal in life, is just to get more people upside down.
Yeah. It was cool. It was really cool. So also, speaking of being outside, like you've done a number of other things with gymnastics, and such outside, like bar stars or training in nature, or even like there's photos of you hanging off of signs or in the New York subway doing an Aisha or a handspring or something. So like, what is it that like inspires this movement in your environment, or is there something that do you like being like creative in the space?
Honestly, I think I just have like a lot of ADHD and like don't want to sit still and just want to climb on shit. Someone tells me I can't do it, I'm like, yeah, we're doing it. No, like I do enjoy climbing on things and getting inspired by stuff, and like so I feel like sometimes it's nice to, I don't know, misuse things like street signs, but like that's what they're there for, isn't it? Just to climb on and for photo shoots. No, like look what I can do. I really do actually like the idea of being able to do things in not pristine environments. Like a lot of people can be like, I can only train if it's quiet and flat and this and that. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's nice. But then like throw me into something where it's a little bit more chaotic and I kind of feel like I thrive in it and it's kind of fun to see what happens. And that extra element of, I don't know, I want to say not danger, but like taboo to some degree of it is kind of fun. And I'm definitely an exhibitionist. So it's like what I can do.
Yeah, I can relate on this as well as like I really like to be in a space and being like, how can I use this space to whatever, get push-ups and pull-ups and animal flow, like whatever it is that's interesting to me. It's like I think it helps you connect with the space that you're in. And you're like, because so many times we just walk through the world and we're like, we went from this place to this place, especially in New York City. But it's like, oh, now you have like a different type of connection with that place, even the subway. Like, like I hang on the subway bars all the time because what else are you going to do for a 30-minute ride? Like, you got to do something, like use the bars, you know?
I mean, so I've been able to collaborate with a lot of random people and photographers and movement practitioners that also want to collab and make cool art. And so I've done a lot of different photo shoots throughout the years in the city and around the city. And it is kind of cool because like I can walk around and I'm like, oh, I remember being there and doing this thing that one time.
Yeah.
Like how different memories kind of pop up as you wander around.
Yeah. Like you are part of the environment that we're walking around in, and it's just another reminder. Yeah. Another thing, going back to pole too, I forgot to mention this, but you are also a judge as well as a performer.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, as performing for 7 years, what is your relationship to judging? And also, like, looking back on your gymnastics history, like how do you feel about judging and competitions and all of that?
So I started judging, I don't even remember when I started judging, but a while ago as well. Like I competed for a long time. And even as I was competing, I was also judging different competitions. I was involved with USPSF, which is one of the sport organizations that's trying to get pole into the Olympics. And I competed with them for a number of years and judged with them for a number of years. And they have their judging into different categories, and I always judge difficulty. So it was like, this is the move, you either do it or don't do it, and that's like what I'm judging on. Versus there's artistic, there's creative, there's other like different judging, technical, things like this. So I really like the difficulty judge as like, okay, here's where you're going to either do it or you're not going to do it. And like, it's interesting. As far as like judging other types of competitions, I actually enjoy judging. Because no offense, I'm going to be judging anyway. But there's something fun about like seeing what people are creating that's different now and like different things. And like there's always maybe one or two people at a comp that just like you feel that energy, like they are nailing it. And like there's something so cool about that. And then everybody else, like you put in such an effort and it's cool to see what people do and what people create. And not everybody's going to be amazing. And that's part of the competition scene, I think, is learning how to do it and then do it again a little bit better and then do it again a little bit better. So giving feedback and getting on stage or, like telling people, here's what you could do better the next time is also really interesting to me.
Nice. So you're able to give that feedback like in person?
Most of it's in person. Most of it's just like on notes.
Okay.
Usually that competitors get back after the comps.
Oh, cool.
And always, if anybody ever has any feedback or wants more feedback or more information, they can always hit me up about it. And I don't do like making of routines for other people. Like I'm not good with other people's choreo. But one of my favorite things to do is clean people's routines. So if somebody already has a structure and already has a routine coming together, they're like, say a couple weeks out where they still have time to change things. I want to get in there and be like, these are the things that I see as a competitor and as a judge and as the performer that you could do better and how to change those.
Yeah, I think you also have a good way of pointing out where momentum can take you into your next spot and like that transition, cleaning up that transition as well as the static holds. I think like going to your classes, I know you have wide range of experience in that, and it's really helpful feedback.
I also like to play a game sometimes with people that's like, okay, I see something that maybe could happen, and suggesting it and then seeing if the person can do it.
Yeah.
And like that's always fun too when you like see the potential that somebody has and then helping them kind of get to that place.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just like noticing it's there and seeing if they can come up with it a little bit themselves too. Because a lot of the times, like, we don't play early enough in the journey. And then that's where we're just like trying to just listen to everybody, and instead of figuring some stuff out on our own, like you said, your 2001 years, you were figuring everything out on your own. And that's probably why you are at the success rate that you are now, and so good at pointing it out in others and figuring out those little pieces that can be tuned. Yeah. And also like just the idea of refining movement.
I mean, that's like, something that, so if you look at like my pole dancing, I guess as a whole, the things that I do really well. The things that I don't do. Which is an interesting concept, because it's like, if I'm going to take a class, yeah, I'll do stuff that I'm not good at, and great. But if I'm going to practice or perform or teach, I'm going to do the things that I'm like and that I'm good at, and that I have done over and over and over again. And I am a big, my biggest inspiration is really not new moves or things that are trending. It's really about getting the basics, doing them better, building on layering those basics, and making them more complex.
I mean, when you say basics, your basics are not always basic though. Some of your basics are like fungies, which are like level 4 or 5.
Yeah, so right. If I'm performing and doing things, that's my personal preference, but I'm not generally teaching fungies to most of the classes that I'm teaching.
Okay.
So it's kind of I'm teaching like a once a month class that's a little bit higher level right now, but I found that a lot of people are like, I'm going to air quote, scared of me a little bit because of the stuff that I do personally, but that's not necessarily how I teach. And then once everybody comes to my class, they're always like, oh, I was scared of you, but now I realize you're a really good teacher and you're making this accessible. So I'm also not teaching beginners.
Yeah.
So I'm teaching mostly like intermediate and advanced students.
Yeah.
So they've already had a little bit of pole experience. And so sometimes it's more, basics to me are anything that you can do on both sides. Right. And so that does change based on the level that people are at and the competency that different people are at.
Yeah.
And once you can kind of build that base on both sides, then you can progress it to the next thing. And I think that that's really important. And not everybody always comes back to the repetitive nature of what's really going to make things get into your body, which is literally just doing it over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. And then figuring out all those little pieces where you can tune it up yourself. Because you can have someone point it out, but until you do it and you feel it over and over and over again, it's not going to stick as much. Yeah.
Right. So like, because you've now unlocked level 1, you can start doing level 2. You know what I mean? Or whatever the next phase of things are. And then if you do a pattern enough times that you don't have to think about what you're doing, then you can actually start to make it look interesting. Right? Find little different details or different flourishes and make it more your own versus just the standardized move.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like even going back to the handstands with that, like once you have that foundation in your handstand, you add in the twerking, the airwalks, like where your legs can be looser. But you had to build that strong foundation first.
I mean, handstands are the greatest example of just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And like, it's crazy because like once you've done a skill enough times, it's ingrained in your body. But then if you don't practice it, it's like not quite the same. Then you have to get back into the practice of it. And that's kind of cool too.
Yeah.
Like parts of things stay with you, but then like you can still kind of lose some of it, but then gain some of it back.
Yeah. Even with like injuries and stuff, you have to readjust your whole body in so many different ways. And you're like, oh, my shoulders overcompensating for my like opposite glute or something that's totally, you're like,
But that's what's really cool about bodies is that you can compensate. You can find ways to maneuver around with whatever limitations your body has at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And finding ways to kind of challenge it and build strength and energy in other ways to build yourself back stronger.
Yeah, you just have to be motivated to keep going. Yeah. That was something Carolyn spoke about in the first podcast that we had. Like she had ruptured her Achilles doing like she was into breakdancing, and then like she just learned how to walk on her hands and all the other things. So it's like, yeah, it's very cool to just, again, work around it, whether you're working around your environment or you're working around your injuries internally, just to keep moving.
Yeah, never stop moving.
Yeah. Also, like, I think something that you've done for your warm-up is amazing for a class, like full body warm-up. But one of the first classes I went to, we did like nerve flossing at the end. I'm like, oh, she knows her stuff. I'm like, okay, Sam knows what's going on. So can you talk a little bit about like nerve flossing or any other tricks?
I like the way nerve flossing feels.
Right.
So I like to do it. So I've nursed myself back through a number of shoulder injuries that some were undiagnosed, some were diagnosed, doing PT and PT for myself. And you find different ways of compensating and different ways of moving around. So I think that fucking with your end ranges is important, depending on what those end ranges are. And so nerve flossing, I think, is one of those things that like, not only physically and emotionally, but you have to like mentally deal with what are your body's real limitations and like what is different sensations feel like and what is a bad sensation, what is a good sensation, and the fine line between them sometimes.
I think it also just like draws that just awareness of like the nerves all the way into your finger, just going all the way up to your neck. You're like, oh, okay, this is here. You know, like
I'm aware of you.
Yeah, you're all here.
But I feel like after a lot of movement, it's good to take that end range stretch a little bit and kind of feel.
Yeah, especially with all the handstand stuff or like shoulder mounting. There's just a lot that's in the shoulder, the whole arm, I think, too, in the practices.
I mean, I think that sometimes too, like we don't necessarily cool down enough. I also sometimes do evening practices where I just like lay on the floor and foam roll or wiggle or whatever to kind of finish out the day.
It's nice too. Okay. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, I took a class with Donna who said that we were playing these hand games, and I was like, where did you do these hand games? And it was, just different intelligent things to do with your hands. And she was like, my mentor taught me. And then she said, it was Sam, this was before I had ever taken class with you. And I was like, that's so cool. And I also knew some hand games too. And I was like, I really much enjoy this. So you want to talk a little bit about hand games or?
Okay. So the okay and L one.
So you make an okay sign with one hand and an L sign with the other hand, and then you try to flip it back and forth.
Yeah. So this is the basic one that I was taught, the first one. And it was actually the first yoga teacher training I took in Boston. And somebody had taught it, and I was pissed off that I was like, why can't I do this? Like, I was so annoyed that I was like, I'm a functional movement person. Like, why can't I figure out how to move my hands in opposite directions? And it just kind of like lit my brain up with like this idea of like building new neural pathways and being able to continuously learn new skills. Technically the movement isn't difficult, but it's really difficult at first if you're not used to doing it. So it's a brain tease.
Yeah.
So it makes you also have this like, moment, which I think is a thing that as adults we try to avoid, which is stupid because you don't want to necessarily always be in your comfort zone because that's not going to push you further. That being said, that could be a physical comfort zone or a mental comfort zone. So mentally, like being able to unlock these new pathways if you're willing to put in the time for them. So yeah, there's like 5 or 6 different patterns that I really like. And then there's a million more that other people use. And it's always entertaining because like the ones that I can do, I've been doing them long enough. They're easy. Yeah. If I try somebody else's pattern, I have that like moment again.
Yeah.
And there is I was really into like the movement community for a long time. doing different trainings and things like this. But then a lot of the, I don't know, main movement practitioners starting getting more into like dance pattern, arm swings, and ball bouncing movement stuff.
Yeah. What movement patterns did you do, or what movement practices workshops did you go to?
I did a couple of, like, I did one movement X with Ido Portal style.
Okay.
Like, he didn't teach it, but other people did. Maybe 2 of those. And then I practiced with a lot of people that used to be Ido students that were no longer his students, that were awesome. There was a camp called Moby that we did, and it was in, like, outside of Boston. That was a lot of different movement practitioners. Erin Cantor was there. Tom Wexler was there. Shira Yazid was there, and some other people. And so we did lots of different movement practices, and it was super fun. I feel like one that I didn't get into was the fighting tiger stuff or fighting monkey stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Mostly because I didn't want to hold my arms out for a long period of time from whatever I heard from people. But
yeah,
I think it's really interesting. And I really do like that, like, Ido brought movement into a broader audience. And when I was interested in his work, it was mostly locomotion, bent arm strength, and straight arm strength. And when it changed, when he started getting more into ball bouncing and movement arm swing patterns, is when I kind of lost interest.
Okay.
Which I understand is like a teaching modality. You need to continue having students be struggling at something. So great. But for me, I am doing too many other things to put in the energy and effort that it would take to get good at those patterns.
Right.
Which for me weren't going to get into pole or more into handstands. It was for something else, more mental capacity and time consuming. So I want to do strength. And like, that's what I was interested in at the time. So I was like really into muscle ups, really into handstands, and it was fun to do it for a while. I met a lot of really interesting people through it. But I also realized that a lot of these modalities are very anti anybody else, which frustrates me.
Yeah.
Because great, drink the Kool-Aid, but like, I want to drink a little bit of everybody's Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Because there's so much different movement, people and ideas and structures that I want to take a little bit of and then put into what I'm teaching and what I'm giving to people.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing myself.
That's exactly how I feel about all of it, especially because when you have a student, it's like there's so many different things that motivate that student. And it's just, for me, I look at it as like I have more tools to see how I can get this student motivated to move. Because at the end of the day, it's just like, how can you get them excited about movement and pour your excitement into the process?
And make it relevant for like what people are needing in the time and stuff like this. So I also have taken like a number. I always just take trainings for mostly entertainment value for myself, not because I necessarily want to teach that modality. FRC is one that I took one of their like weekend trainings, like their basic thing, and I really enjoy parts of it, but I don't necessarily enjoy all of it or the way that they teach.
Right.
So I took the parts that I liked and I used those pieces in my flexibility classes, but I'm not going to call it Kim Stretch because I'm not doing their modality. Right. The same thing as liquid motion. I love Jenny Janover. I love liquid motion. I finally took my first official liquid motion cert, and I'm signed up for level 2 heels and pole as well, because I want to educate myself in I think Jenny's great. So I like the way she teaches. I like what she's giving out to people, and I want to do it for my own education purposes.
Right.
And to be able to sometimes just like take 3 days off and just immerse myself in a training is so fun.
Yeah.
And not have to be the teacher and get to be the student for a little while.
Yeah. It makes you definitely think about things in a totally different way when you're allowed to like relax your brain from being the instructor.
Yeah. It's just fun too.
Yeah.
Like I like being student. Like I want to learn and absorb and do things like that. And I also think it's really important for people that you learn from to not be stagnant in their own movement and education. The thing that makes me the saddest is when I see people that start teaching that then stop taking classes.
Right.
And I don't like them anymore. Like, no, but it's like, I mean, I don't dislike them for real, but like, I would prefer to take classes and move with people that are continuously putting themselves in situations where they're not the greatest.
And humbling. Yeah.
But be able to like learn new things. And I like I took I always steal different like pieces of something from every class or every training or everything that I do. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that move. Oh, right. I remember that this thing, or that's a cool variation of that. Or I didn't think of that sequencing. And then use it in my own practice and use it in my own teaching because I'm like, I like that. That felt great. Let's keep doing this. And some of those things have become my standard base moves. And I took them from this place or this place or this place. And then I kind of turned them into, I'm going to call it my modality, like whatever. But yeah, like kind of the why and way that I teach, I guess.
Yeah. And it's like, it's cool to also piece together what you find important and come up with like that concoction like that. Yeah. Like there are so many things out there that like there are a lot of certs or workshops or retreats that you can go on. And again, I'm like you, I don't like to just drink the Kool-Aid of one. I like doing different things. I like being, going against the grains a lot of the time too, or just challenging some ideas. But it also has been really nice being a student of pole because this is the first time in a while where I've really, really been more student and less like instructing. And it's been a very, very humbling experience. Pole is very humbling for anyone listening. It's the most humbling movement practice I've ever had. But also it has been wonderful to learn from women.
Cool.
And that's like kind of what that also like prompted this podcast is like, I feel like a lot of the people in the forefront or running the other movement workshops or retreats, it's very male dominated, very white male dominated.
Been for a long time.
And
we're starting to get in there.
Yes. And so it's just been very refreshing for this past like almost 2 years, like just like this has been where a lot of my money has been going. Right. But yeah. So speaking of the different spaces that you've been in, retreats, like different, I don't know, camps, movement camps that I've gone to, like you've spoken about going and learning like Chinese pole, correct?
I mean, I have done a couple times.
Yeah. Or like, so I'm interested in like, where like how pole or some of your other movement practices, vary in different cultures. Cause you also go to Ireland and you teach in Ireland once a year, right?
Well, I've been there a couple times. Okay. So, there's a couple camps that I've repeatedly taught at, and I've also repeatedly been a student at.
Okay.
Like some of my favorite pole camps are also camps that I will go as a student. Because it's like if I like this organization or person that's putting it on and they put on a good camp or people that I'm friends with or teaching that I want to take class with and hang out with, it's great to be able to continuously go back and do that. Pole's cool because it's literally like kind of the same everywhere you go. You're going to find the same group of people to some degree. Yeah, they're all different individuals, but like the vibe is definitely there for pole. It's a great community. And it's interesting because I feel like in the pole community, I'm known for doing handstands, and in the handstand community, I'm known for doing pole. So it's like they kind of balance based off of each other to some degree, which is kind of interesting. But I really do like also giving pole people the opportunity to learn handstands because it's not something that a lot of pole people teach. There is a little bit of crossover for sure, but I think that pole needs more handstand. More for just strength and conditioning. Like pole is a lot of pull and the handstands are all push. So it's really, I think handstands are a good cross training for pole. And for other movement practices too, just putting your hands on the ground and being able to support yourself.
Yeah, I was like, I've been saying that too. I'm like, it would be awesome to even pair pole with like animal flow or like crawling patterns, just because again, it's that pull push.
Yeah.
Like you could superset it like crazy, you know?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great to do both. And I do think it's really helpful. And honestly, I think the handstands have helped me rehab my shoulder injuries many times over. Just from building strength and supporting my own weight and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. And then, but I remember at one point you were explaining like cup grip being stronger in certain areas of the world. And like, so.
Yeah. So I was saying, Dan Rosen does a true grip funny grip versus I do a cup grip funny grip. So I think it's based on like who taught you to some degree with like the lineage of your pole journey or whatever. So for me, I was more interested in Chinese pole techniques, I guess, is what I kind of ventured towards. Edward Doye did Pole Art 2011, and that comp, like his routine from that comp, like blew my mind. And a lot of the patterns that he was using were stuff that I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm interested in that. And that looks like something I can do. And he was a Chinese pole artist in some Cirque du Soleil shows. So that was like his background. And it was cool how Chinese pole moves could be adapted to, I'm going to call it dance pole, because that's what the circus community calls it. But I was able to train at Circus Warehouse for a number of years, and they had a Chinese pole, and I taught myself how to do certain things. And cup grip is more prevalent in Chinese pole because it's fatter.
How big is
Chinese poles? Are, I don't know, like twice the size maybe of a regular pole. But I don't know the actual diameter. But they're usually coated in like a stickier rubber, and they buoy a little bit more, or like bounce a little bit more when you move with them.
Oh, okay.
You can't slide; it's more sticky. So some of the grips are used like. You wouldn't see a twisted grip as often on a Chinese pole because it's harder to grip. So cup grip is an easier grip to kind of go. And so because that was more my focus, I got more into cup grip.
Yeah, for the listeners, if you don't know pole, cup grip is where your fingers are on one side of the pole, and twisted grip, your arms kind of twisted. Well, you're usually upside down when it's twisted. So
grip. So basically just like that style was more interesting to me versus like some people did more contemporary pole, or some people did more exotic pole, or some people did more hard style heels, or put karate on the pole. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different styles of things. So the Chinese pole moves were more gymnastics-y, I feel like, to some degree. And that was kind of my base for things that excited me.
Nice. Yeah, it's also interesting to just think about the different grips and pole, because you did bar stars for a while too.
I didn't officially bar stars, but I did a lot of bar stuff.
You did a lot of bar stuff. You hung out with the crew.
I did hang out with the crew a couple times. I could hold my own.
But yeah, so it's like that horizontal pole, or like having a bar that is just, it seems safer because you're pulling straight down, as opposed to like, if you've never tried pole before, you're trying to pull on something where your hand's already kind of slipping down. So it's a different type of pull. You're trying to like send the force like horizontally, or like
pull and push.
Yeah.
It's like a straight bar, you're just kind of pulling on it.
Yeah.
I do think straight bar work is really important. Because it's a little bit more symmetrical.
Right.
So hanging, I think, is a great thing. If you don't want a handstand, hang. Right? Build your shoulder strength, but just like dangling your own weight. And doing different shoulder mobility movements and things like that.
Yeah, like circles or like waves with the spine.
Rotations.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of different things are fun. So yeah, the bar star stuff was kind of a little bit from gymnastics, because I can do a glide kip. And at the time that I was doing more of it, I could do muscle ups. So it was like a fun way to like pop up on the bar and kind of show the boys that they didn't have it all. Look what I can do. I feel like that's half my
more footage,
just being like, look what I can do.
You're not the only one who can do this. I mean, there's a video of you on Instagram with like someone street performing in the subway, and you're just like, I can also do that.
Yeah, that was fun. The cajole's really, really nice, actually. I had posted a different video of me doing something on a train, and he had hit me up on Instagram being like, hey, you want to collab?
Nice.
Because he did a lot of videos where he would do something on a train or dance, and then he'd have like a regular person, air quote, come in and like tag them out and then like do the thing too.
Nice.
So it's kind of cool to be able to be a part of that.
That's fun. It's fun. You've been like all over the city doing all of the things. You're really a staple in these past, like, how many years did you say you've been here? 11?
11 years.
Yeah, that's wild. It's wild. And pole dancing for
longer than that.
23. Wow. Longer than some people have been.
Yeah, I'm getting to the point where I've been pole dancing longer than some of my students have been alive.
Right.
Which is like a weird thing to think about.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, But that is something like a testament to say, like, you have to keep trugging along at it. You know what I mean? And, like, there's all these people who get frustrated. And I'm like, yeah, you've been doing pole for like 4.5 minutes. Like, calm down. Like, keep putting the work in. It'll come back at you.
Yeah, it's also, it goes back to like the like playing with it and playing with the struggle and being okay with the struggle and the repetition. It's like
that, like, part of the reason I like handstands and part of the reason I like pole is because it doesn't ever end. Like, you can still do, I mean, me personally, like, I can still work on my basics and they still suck.
Right.
And you can still refine them.
Right.
And keep working on it. And there's always like a next level of where you can go to, which I think is really neat. Like, there's no end to it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be a harder trick. It could be a smoother transition, or it could be how do you draw in audience emotionally, or how do you make this look more effortless?
Right. Or how do you how do you get into like an Aisha and then leg wave and make it like your own or whatever. Yeah, your own.
There's so many options.
It's endless, and that's why I like it's the first thing since basketball that I'm like, I kind of want to do this every day. Like, it's, there's an itch. Yeah. So some other final things we should I want to ask, where is like, how will people reach you if they're in New York City? And then like,
so Instagram is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Lithium Kitten is my Instagram. I'm currly fully green and hypothetically not shadow banned as of today.
Wow.
However,
congratulations.
It's still not being seen. So who knows what the fuck the algorithm is happening. But Instagram is really the easiest way to get a hold of me. That's honestly how I communicate with like 90% of the people that I communicate with on a regular basis.
Okay.
On there, I have a link tree, which I might have to take down depending on if they keep me green or not. But
okay,
you can find me samanthastar.com or lithiumkitten.com. Will link to my website. In general, I try to keep my weekly schedule updated there. And also just like ways to contact me and a couple of different random links to podcasts that I've done and videos that I've been in and some ambassador links that I have. So that's my schedule, my bio and stuff like that. And then I teach regular classes at Full Circle, Warrior Bridge, Incredible, and Vital right now. And that's been keeping me pretty busy.
Yeah.
On top of that, like, I'll travel to teach workshops and judge competitions and train at camps and things like this.
Yeah. And you also do some personal training too, right?
I do a little bit of personal private coaching and stuff like that. But I actually generally enjoy doing group classes. Almost more than private lessons.
Yeah, it's a different energy too.
Different energy, different crowd. I do have a couple of reoccurring privates, and I do privates on occasion, but it's a little bit more limited.
Yeah, I think, well, I would say that like being in your group class, there's a different energy in the class where you feel like you can do stuff that you wouldn't feel like you might be able to do on your own. Because it's like you're there and it's like amped up. Yeah.
Trick people into things is like my most.
Yeah.
So you don't do it. What do you mean you can't do it? You just did it. You're fine.
Yeah. We're going to flip 4 more times and then you'll be okay. Yeah. It's been really fun learning from you in all the ways. I also, I just remembered this too. I heard this from one of my favorite movement people, Katie Bowman. Do you know her?
I don't think so.
Okay. So she's like, she talks about movement throughout the day, movement snacks. I feel like she's just an amazing person and resource. So anyone on the podcast, she has lots of books and podcasts as well. But she spoke about the body in one of her books, and she was just like, I like to think of the body with the joints as a bunch of stars, and you're always creating different constellations and different positions. So like it was in her book called Rethink Your Positioning and how to take different positions. And I'm like, this would work really well for Sam because Sam Star is like all stars. And I was like, so listeners too, think about taking, your body into different positions and constellations throughout the day. Yeah. And one more thing, what is like the one message you would want to say to all the listeners when it comes to movement or life or anything?
I mean, don't stop moving. Doesn't matter what you do, just do something. Anything is better than nothing. Sometimes starting seems really daunting, so just do something little for just a few minutes. You can do something little for just a few minutes and then see what happens, see how it feels. Go from there.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This has been a really fun conversation. All the information will also be in the bio. So, and if you need to reach out to Sam, I'll also have the Instagram links and stuff too. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.